co-host this with my partner here, Jason Lucarelli. We co-hosted each one together. And we have 6 readers tonight. They're each going to read for between 10 and 15 minutes. We have a mix of poetry, prose, and some nonfiction. I think it might be the first time we have nonfiction, so that's exciting to bring that in the mix tonight. This event is held every other month. Our next one will be September 8th, and we're excited about that. Jason is going to host the first half of this, and then we're going to have a 10 to 15 minute break. You could buy books. Please help support the authors if you can. We also have a donation bucket for the gallery, so they can keep having events like this. They also have music shows. If you want to find out what's going on here, you can log on to the internet and check out newvisionstudio.com. They also have a Facebook and a Twitter, so you can find out other stuff they do here besides literary events. Before I turn it over to Jason, I have 3 announcements that I want to make that all involve the local literary community here. And there's some flyers near the donation jar that also have this info on. First is my old friend Steph Szymanski, who is back in the area, and I didn't know this, but we went to Westchester together and took a lot of creative writing courses together. She is now running a writers group, a writers workshop for prose writers. It's for fiction writers now, but you're thinking of opening it to nonfiction maybe? Right. Okay. That group is called the Stacks Writers Group, and they meet the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of every month at 6 p.m. And are you still meeting at the Banshee?
That's still up in the air. If anyone is interested, they can just email the group.
Okay. Yeah, you can email the group because I think their locations rotate. The group name is Stacks Writing Group at gmail.com. There's little flyers near the donation table. Steph is a great writer, and she's taken a lot of creative writing classes, so I'm sure she has a wonderful group there. Another announcement I want to make. A lot of you know the Foothills Publishing community, and Mike Zarnecki, unfortunately his house burned down and he lost a lot of the Foothills books and his ability to publish. There is going to be a fundraiser to raise money to reestablish the press at Writers and Books, which is located in Rochester, New York. That's at 740 University Avenue, and it's Sunday, July 22nd from 2 to 5. However, if you can't make that trip, you could also send some money to him at the email poetguy@foothillspublishing.com. They have a PayPal account. One of our readers, Christine, actually brought some flyers. Foothills has published a lot of the writers in this community and in the tri-state area in general. So it would be great if people could help Mike get his feedback on the ground with that. And then finally, last announcement I have to make is there's an open mic for poets that meets the last Thursday of every month at the Library Express.
And fiction writers.
And fiction writers. And whatever. At the Library Express bookstore in the Steamtown Mall, which Andrea Tallarico, she operates that store, and I host the open mic. That's this Thursday at 6:30. Please come if you want to share work. We have 12 open spots for that. Now I'm going to hand it over to Jason, then I'll be back to host the rest of the reading after the break. Take it away.
Okay, thank you. And please, come out to that open mic. I think it's probably the only one right now left in Scranton. We have another one in Wilkes-Barre.
Yes, it's the only all-ages open mic left in an area for writers.
Mm-hmm. And it's important to come to that, because if you don't, Brian's not going to host it, and then I won't. So I'm going to break the ice and start with a poem. Well, it's actually prose, but she's a poet. Her name is Mary Ruffalo, and she lives in Bennington, Vermont. It's called On Twilight. Sorry, I guess it's weird that I'm not reading something of my own, but sorry. It's On Twilight. I read the poem of a student, and in the poem God wandered through a room, picking up random objects, a pear, a vase, a shoe, and in bewilderment said, "I made this?" Apparently God had forgotten making anything at all. I awarded this poem a prize, because I was a judge of such matters. I was not really awarding the student, I was awarding God. I knew someday the student would pick up his old poem and say in bewilderment, "I made this?" And at that moment, his whole world would be lost in the twilight. And when you are finally lost in the twilight, you cannot judge anything. Our first reader, Luciana Celestine, was a kid in school who got in trouble nearly every day for telling stories while the teacher was trying to give lessons. It was then that she discovered who describing things that not only made people laugh, but also lent itself well to writing. She picked up her pen and has not stopped since. Luciana lives in Pittston with some furry boys. She received her BA in English from King's College and her MA in creative writing from Georgetown University. Please welcome her.
Hi everybody, thanks for coming. Thanks to Brian and Jason for hosting this event. I'm actually going to read two things today. One of them is nonfiction, the other is a poem. So I'm going to start with my nonfiction piece called Perspective. I never lifted my eyes from the floor as I walked down the hallway. Medicinal disinfectant lingered in the air, stinging my nostrils. The cacophony of beeps, buzzes, and words composed a symphony for the sick and dying. Hurried footsteps rushed past me. I listened to hushed conversations amongst family members as I continued on, furrowed brows, pained eyes. As I approached Mr. Stewart's room, I could not help but sigh. Everything was wrong. From the hallway, I saw the shape of his feet buried underneath a pile of blankets. I hesitated before rapping on his door with the lightest touch, hoping maybe he wouldn't hear me at all. No response. Fine, I thought. I shouldn't have been there anyway. I stuck my hand into my coat pocket and pulled out my keys. Then I heard, "It's okay. You can come in." Damn it. I took a soft step around the corner, and I did not even recognize the man in the bed. His cheeks were hollow, and his blue and white printed hospital gown hung off of his skinny shoulders. Completely bald except for a few patches of fuzzy brown hair, he looked weak, not like the apex of manliness and strength I had envisioned as a teenager. He was chained to so many tubes and IVs that he reminded me of a prisoner locked away in some archaic jail. But then, he smiled faintly and his brown eyes sparkled, just a little bit. That sense of familiarity ran, and I smiled too. "I barely recognized you without your beard," I said as I ran my fingers through my hair. He laughed a little, then said, "You always love to pick on me for that." "Actually, my favorite target was your sunflower tie," I said as I sat down in the pleather mock chair. "Ah, yes, that's right. Every time I turned around to write something on the blackboard, I heard you laughing." "It was all in good fun," I said as I tried to lighten the mood. It felt like an impossible task. He looked down at his hands, which he folded gently in his lap. His knuckles were big and knobby, and I tried not to stare. He glanced up at the soccer game on television and then asked, "Why are you here?" "I came to hand in my Latin homework. I know it's a little late," I said with a completely straight face. I didn't have the heart to tell him that I was really there because my favorite teacher was dying from leukemia. I wanted to see him one last time and make fun of him for nostalgia's sake. He probably knew that reason at least. "Do you remember your first declension endings?" he asked, a big smile spreading across his gaunt face. Finally. Feeling as though I had accomplished the greatest feat in the world, I sat up straight and stated Agricola. "What case is that?" "I have no idea," I said with a laugh. "That's why you had to give me that book. I only know that word means farmer because it was the first word in the text. I'm truly clueless about the rest." He raised his eyebrows and smiled. "Yes, I was the absolute worst Latin student who had ever lived, and Mr. Stewart had me sit right in front of his desk. Dead languages were not my area of interest. In fact, Latin class was my favorite time to plot my next dirty deed. As I looked at him lying in that bed, I felt a sudden pang of guilt, but was reminded of a particularly hilarious prank I had pulled. I spent an entire period penning a fake love letter in Latin to my future class valedictorian. At the end of the day, I slipped the letter into his locker, which read, "You are a Roman god, and I want your body." I nearly laughed out loud, but held my breath, sure that Mr. Stewart had noticed my broken concentration. I recovered with, "So why did you give me that book anyway?" "So that you could graduate." "Thanks for that," I said. "I really needed the help." "Well, we didn't want you around for another year. We were tired of hearing you scream fetus in the hallway." Just as I was about to apologize for being the annoying student, a nurse walked into the room. "Excuse me, could you step out for a moment?" she asked, her hands filled with all sorts of vials. I looked at Mr. Patrick and said, "It's okay. I really should be going anyway." "Thanks for coming," he said without meeting my eyes. "It was no problem. I knew you were here, and I just wanted to stop by," I said as I stood up. The air in the room changed, and he clenched his jaw. I could not imagine what it had been like for him, having to depend on strangers to keep him alive, unable to even shift his own weight in bed. It was so unfair, such an unbearable tragedy that I found myself fighting back tears. "You're the only one of my students who came to see me," he muttered. My throat tightened. The nurse looked to my chair where I had been sitting. I unbuttoned my jacket and slid it off, then threw it over the arm of the chair. Slowly, I walked into the hallway. I crossed my arms and leaned against the wall, exhaling deeply. I hung my head and listened once again to the buzzes, beeps, and whirs. This time, they build to a hopeful crescendo. Nothing is fair. Mr. Stewart lay in bed on the other side of the wall, fighting long after they had told him to stop. And suddenly, my breath felt precious. Thank you. Now I'm going to read this poem a couple weeks ago, on June 5th, actually, so about 6 weeks ago. The transit of Venus occurred. And for those of you who don't know what that is when Venus crosses directly in front of the sun. We can actually see it from Earth. And the next time that's going to happen is December 10th, 2117. So none of us are going to be here then. So it made me think about kind of those things in life that we let slip by, things that we miss. So this is my poem in honor of the transit of Venus, and it is so aptly named Transit of Venus. My kisses are captive, trapped by solar flares, eclipsed by stares and sighs. A lifetime of waiting. Planets that aligned and unaligned and realigned so many times that by the time they got to me, they had vanished. Spaghetti through a wormhole. Only to rotate in some parallel universe where my evil twin won all of my spoils. Back at the Big Bang. That moment when Pegasus split. The smash crash of atoms. Cosmic dust swirling, sparkling like moonlight in my eyes. I saw you first there, before they tore me from Venus's heart, saying, "Here, child, here is a world where hope dies, where dreams get buried in duty, where love is often a sin, where you, one of 7 billion, will be more alone than that first electron that floated through space. Here, child, it's all yours. Gag on your passion. Forget the very fact that your life and breath are more miraculous than the way this all began. Live in a strongbox. Cry to a dead womb. Grieve what you never had the chance to lose. Breathe. Cycle back. The first big experiment. Chart your course by the stars. Braid together the past, present, and future. Loose Cassiopeia's bonds. Take the skyway to the other side. Greater than the firebird, swimming in a solar pulse, surfing on a wave of electric light. Come back to the beginning, the place where we first met, the place where my eyes melt like the moon. Thank you.